I'm on the phone with Sucharita Mulpuru, Vice President and Principal Analyst with Forrester. Sucharita recently released a pair of very important industry reports. One is the Predictions 2014 U.S. Retail E-Businesses, and the other, in conjunction with the NRF, is the State of Online Retailing 2014 report. Good morning, Sucharita. Thanks for taking the time to talk with us today.
Oh, thanks, Tim. Appreciate you having me.
Sucharita, e-commerce grew at a nearly 30% rate over the past holiday season. Is this the same kind of growth you're expecting to happen in holiday 2014 as well?
Well, I think that there are a couple of things. One is that you hit the law of large numbers, so naturally, kind of when you have a big year, the next year it's very difficult to comp the same numbers. So I'd be surprised if we see quite a 30% growth. The other factor is that retailers hit a wall in some ways, particularly with the carrier networks, because e-commerce, I think, is really taxing the capacity of the carrier networks, especially with express deliveries in the days leading up to Christmas. So I think that it's going to be hard to get year-over-year growth, not because customers don't want it, not because retailers don't have the capacity to deliver it. It's more because, from a capacity constraint standpoint, we need to push orders earlier into the season.
Retailers had some woes with the major carriers, and I know you alluded to that already. The carriers weren't able to live up to the demands of both the merchants and the consumers. Do you think this is something that may deter the consumer during the next holiday season, or is the consumer kind of like hooked on e-commerce right now and is willing to forgive and forget?
I don't think that it is an issue of, consumers didn't get packages when they were promised packages. And by the way, it wasn't the carriers that had made the promises; it was often the retailers themselves that had made the promises and over-promised on what they had overpromised more than what the SLAs that the carriers had committed to were. I think that what we're going to see is just some price hikes in shipping. And definitely in the month of December, possibly in the month of November too. And what that is intended to do is basically it forces everybody's behavior to change. It forces retailers to think more carefully about what free shipping offers they make and when, and it forces customers, especially if those offers, if shipping ends up being more expensive or some of those higher shipping costs get passed on to customers, it makes customers think about where they're going to shop and when. And it's very possible that we may end up driving decent traffic back to physical stores. I don't see a decline compared to this year, but I think that we're just going to see just more measured planning ahead for the shopping purchase. Very similar to the way that online shopping happens now. I mean, if you need something immediately, you go to the store. The strange thing about holiday shopping this year is that there were these very, very lofty expectations that, you could order things, 2 days before Christmas, and, in the cases of some retailers, get it for free by Christmas, and that was just not something that, was a realistic expectation.
Sucharita, I've been with multi-channel merchants since 2006. We're talking about 8 years now, and the role of mobile commerce seems to have changed every year, and especially this decade has changed a lot. How do you envision mobile's role growing or changing in 2014?
Well, I think that a lot of what happens with mobile happens in spite of investments in mobile. Consumers are using the device and finding content that they're looking for, irrespective of whether or not a company is actually investing a lot of money in mobile. And what we see is that almost 20% of e-commerce sales are coming through mobile devices, and of that, the breakout is largely tablet. And when you look at how much is actually happening through smartphones, it's probably probably in the high single-digit percent for now for most retailers. So I think that what we'll see is more consumer usage of mobile devices, more adoption of those mobile devices, and that means just more time online. From a retailer standpoint, I think that it still remains to be seen what major developments that we'll see. I mean, there's a whole school of thought that you just invest in responsive design and make sure that your site is legible across different types of devices and different browsers, and it's really about a lowest common denominator approach that is, for all intents and purposes, riding out the wave of mobile. And then you have a whole other sector of retailers that are investing very heavily in mobile, looking for innovation and new solutions that are mobile unique solutions. I'd put companies like eBay or even Walgreens in the bricks and mortar world in that category. So they're definitely kind of looking to create new solutions and create experiences that are very, very different from just optimizing your site through responsive design for different devices.
Sucharita, what about global growth? The State of Online Retail report shows 14% of retailers will make global commerce a priority, and that, you said, is on top of the 27% who made it a priority in 2013. Is this the year we're going to see a major explosion in international commerce?
I think that cross-border commerce continues to grow every year, but it's still a relatively small part of the overall e-commerce pie. Global e-commerce is probably about $500 billion, and my estimate would be that if we're lucky, maybe 10 to 15% of that's actually cross-border. So it is still nascent. There are a lot of issues with respect to payments and translation of a site into any given market's language. There are issues with transparency around when the package is going to arrive, landed costs, customs, duties, etc. So we haven't fully overcome a lot of the obstacles that are necessary to drive cross-border growth, but it does continue to grow. There's some markets, like for instance Canada and Australia, where there's a significant amount of cross-border growth. A lot of the consumers in those markets are purchasing from websites in the US or the UK or other markets.
Great. Sucharita, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today, and have a great day.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks, Tim.